Today on the podcast, I'm joined by my friend Bradley Lovell. Bradley's a good friend of mine. I've hiked across America with him on the Pacific Crest Trail. I've traveled to Nepal with him to live with a spiritual teacher, and I've written 2 books about those experiences that we've had together. Today on the podcast, we discuss artistic pursuit, childlike play versus mature adult play in daily practice, and various tools for dissolving life's challenges. We then begin to explore ideas like changing and unchanging self, using sensations and feelings as our guides, and what to do after waking up to the reality of suffering. Finally, we wrap things up by getting Bradley's perspective on being written into some of my books. So this was a blast of a conversation. I really hope that you guys enjoyed as much as I enjoyed having it, and that you stick around for some of the insights and wisdom that Bradley has to share and that just arise in our conversation. So, without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, Bradley Lovell. Mr. Bradley.
David, good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I think the first question I want to ask you is, what's it like to be Bradley these days?
Mm, it is very productive to be Bradley these days, and it is very emotional to be Bradley these days. um, I am very much embracing myself as an emotional being and not necessarily an emotionally outward being, but that I have a lot of feelings and sensations and allowing those to come in full force. And that is not always easy, but I've had some things occur in my life that have forced me to feel deeper than I have previously. And in those moments, it's been very challenging and difficult, but there's a lot of wisdom and insight that comes from obviously these challenges, and I'm grateful for them in the end, but sometimes during them, uh, not very pleasant. So yeah, being Bradley right now is fun, exciting, uh, emotional, and kind of mysterious.
Okay. I want to dive deeper into, if you're willing to share, like what are some of those challenges that you're going through right now with whether it's managing emotion or just anything external that's happening that's affecting the internal.
Yes, I recently separated from the woman that I was with more officially for the past year or so. And that has been challenging in certain ways. Uh, this is the standard missing them, missing touch, missing companionship. Um, yeah, when I enmeshed my life into another person's life, I got used to a lot of things and
Hmm.
patterns and whatnot. And coming out of that, I've learned so much about myself and a lot of what not to do. So it ended because of mistakes. There was there's no way around it. There were mistakes made, and I had to face some things, like had to face my unhealthy attachment styles, and still facing them, had to facing this question of what it is to be a man in this world and what that looks like for me in relationship to the world and to a woman. And you know a lot about my history where I wasn't with anyone for a very long time and still feeling like I'm a bit of a novice in this field and learning as I go along, making mistakes, but I think overall I feel good about where I'm going and what I'm learning.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially me, I can relate to that, man. Um, just the challenging aspects of relationship and the making of mistakes and feeling as if, you know, we're novices in this. And I imagine even if someone is in a relationship for a long time, it's important to keep that beginner's mindset and that with each person changing continually, these people are waking up as somewhat new people every day. So new challenges are being presented. Um, and so I deeply resonate with that. And I'm curious if you're willing to talk more about what those mistakes were.
Yeah, I was about to get into that actually. A big mistake that I made that I think a lot of men make that I make, but is I was so enamored with this woman that I lost sight of my own purpose. And I put her ahead of my purpose. And I think any woman will tell you, whether she's aware of it or not, that that is a very unattractive trait for a man, for their purpose to be the woman. And
Hmm.
it's not like I was consciously aware of this at the time. Like, this person is, everything I need in life. This person is like basically my panacea. So I need to protect her at all costs and put her ahead of me at all costs. And that's just that was just a very unhealthy way that I related to women that needed to arise for me to see more clearly and make adjustments. So I'm in that process right now, making adjustments, refinding, realigning to my purpose, and ideally not losing sight of that again. Having enough tools in my tool belt to make sure that if I'm veering off, that I have, one, the tools to put me back on the path and a support group of men around me that I can be vulnerable with, that hold me accountable, and that won't let me get off that path. I think a lot of men, including myself, were thinking we could just do this all alone. We can do this all alone. I'm a man. That's what a man does. He picks himself up by the bootstraps and does it by himself. And it's
Exactly.
just such a myth, bro. It's such a myth.
Hmm.
And it's not a productive myth for me anymore. I'm seeing how a lot of my emotional needs can get met through dialogue with other men. And I was putting so much strain on my relationship, on my woman to meet those needs for me, that it would just be me and her in this bubble, spending all the time together and meeting each other's needs. And it's just not realistic. So now I'm definitely developing more friendships with men, like-minded men, and that I can hold accountable and that can hold me accountable and just help each other move through some of these
Hmm.
challenges that we face with our woman, with the world, with our careers, with our purposes. So that was a big mistake, was putting her before my purpose. Um, which really is the whole mistake in a nutshell. A bunch of different mistakes can, trickle down from that, but that basically comes down to not spending my time and energy toward my own purpose and instead funneling that toward her in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm. Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about the tools that have helped you move through this and that you're currently using? And also, in addition to that, where you see this community of men that you're building, where you see that going? Because maybe there's someone listening right now who is interested in
Yeah.
joining or whatever.
Yeah. The tools that I've had for a long time, and that is meditation, that is a lot of feeling within my body, just a formal practice of sitting down and feeling, doing a couple variations of that. Um, so meditation is one. A solid movement practice is very helpful for me. Definitely moving every day. That can be something as simple as walking some miles to working out in the gym to doing an intense yoga practice. Some sort of physical movement has to be has to be there. And eating well, eating what works for me, and fasting. Fasting is definitely something that I incorporate into my lifestyle. It helps me reset, it helps me get new perspectives on my life situation. So I've been utilizing fasting in different ways and serving. I like to mix it up every now and then and put my energy towards something that is not so apparent that I'm going to get anything out of. Someone that I
Mm.
want to serve, and that could be my parents, that could be someone in the community. So, yeah, service, meditation, uh, fasting, movement, and I guess lately a lot of artwork. I've been doing art, and that's been very healing for me. And focusing on possibly a small business with that. Social time is another tool. I go to the farmers market every Saturday and work there. And that is such a vortex for me at this point. So many things and alignments happen at this Saturday, this 4 hour window where so many connections come in and things I need come in and out. There's such a interesting flow of energy and currency. And that is very healing for me to get that social interaction with people.
Mhm.
I honestly prefer seclusion. I like being alone, uh, but that's not always the best for me for my mental health. So yeah, those are some of the tools I
Mm.
utilize on a weekly basis. And as far as the men's group, where I see it going, so I'm just starting this right now. And getting it going. And it's just with men that I find very high caliber that I've met throughout the years. And you were obviously on that list. And I had a feeling you wouldn't need to join because of your movement practice with all those men that you get with, which is such a blessing. Uh, so where that is going, I'm not exactly sure. I want it to be a men's group where every person is leading in some way, shape, or form, and we're helping each other be more responsible men in our immediate and extended communities. So that's our families and friends, as well as our local communities and what's going on outside of just our family unit, and possibly even greater than our local communities, maybe even more statewide or global or international. Like, who knows where it goes. The men that are currently interested in the group right now are, I mean, they're quality. They're quality brothers for sure. So you'll have to pop in a couple times and just say, hey.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Um, yeah, I'm very excited for you. It sounds like just a lot's going on right now and all very exciting stuff. And I do want to dive deeper into a few of those elements that you mentioned, one of them being this new creative discipline, I guess, that has emerged for you, which is wood burning. And so, can you,
Yes.
yeah, do you mind speaking a little bit to like what inspired you to get into that? And for anyone that is listening right now, you can go to Bradley's Instagram, which is burning
Burnt
with Bradley,
by Bradley.
burnt by Bradley,
Yeah.
and check out some of the work that he's doing right now.
It's because my
Um,
costs are very high. So after you buy a piece from me, you kind of feel burnt.
yeah, that's the real reason. That's the origin.
Oh, that's funny.
How much are you
Um,
charging for a piece?
well, it just depends. Like, I've got a piece right now that's 1,500. And then this piece I just finished right now, which is that woman that I've been doing, that's probably going to be somewhere like 7 to 900. And It's all about where it's sold, right? Like I take them to the farmer's market and I don't expect to sell some of these higher ticket items there, but it's nice to get the exposure. I've sold items at the farmer's market, um, 200 and below, but
Mhm.
really where I'm going is to be in either a larger market, which I have some options with, or building enough of an account on Instagram that people from the international market, from the whole country, want a piece of it in some way. That'd be idyllic. So, but that takes time to build, and I'm building inventory and kind of figuring out my style and
Mhm.
whatnot. But it's such a great process. It's a very interesting process. You and I have spoken so much about process, just that theme in general. The process of you writing a book, the process of creating anything, a song, and I love process in general, but I love seeing the differences of process within different mediums. So, like a song, for example, creating a song is a very fun process for me, but it's totally different than creating like a big visual art piece. It's much different, and I'm learning different things about myself by testing out these different processes.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's funny because I see you as someone who's highly creative, highly open.
Mhm.
And I see myself in you in that way. And how do you feel about I'm at like I'll just let you expand on. I don't want to put anything that I'm feeling, but
I'm
onto
curious
you.
how you're feeling too, though.
I, about what specifically?
About whatever you're gonna to share.
Okay, okay. Which is as someone who's artistic and creative, it seems as if it's very easy to move from one medium to another, to another, to another, and continually jump from art form to art form. Let's say, be it like dance or movement to writing, in my case, to like even podcasting or blogging or whatever it is, learning the piano. And in your case, more so, whether it's music or um, now like wood burning. And I feel like it's interesting as a friend of yours to see you go through these different phases of life and
Mm.
transmuting who Bradley is into these different mediums, let's say. And so I'm wondering, do you feel as if these old art forms that you've gotten into, do you think those will still stick around? Or do you feel as if um, you're just kind of going with the flow of what feels natural for you in the next moment?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think that all the art forms that I pursue end up playing a role with whatever comes in the future. And I love the idea of melding different art forms. But I'll just use these as an example, the wood burning and the music, because they've been key players for me, is I'm still making music.
Mm,
I still am writing, and I'm not putting as much of my resources into creating it for other people right now. Like I have several songs written, many songs written that I haven't recorded really or haven't put out there. But I kind of wait for the world to tell me sometimes, like where am I needed? What's the deal? And so, for example, recently someone was like, "Are you still making music?" I said, "Yeah, I'm still making music, but I'm not sharing it." And like, "Well, I wish you would. I really like your music. I wish you would share it." Like, okay, well, that's interesting. So
mm,
then it gets, put somewhere in my mind of on some to-do list, and I'll get to it basically. It's on the to-do list, and there's a bunch of other things that I'm prioritizing as well. But it's on there. And so yeah, I they're all still a part of me at this moment. Like comedy is another thing. I love doing those silly little comedy skits, and those are so much
mm,
fun. Um, so yeah, it's a bit of like going with the flow, but and I guess my flow is not entirely letting go of the other art forms, even though I'm
Mm,
focusing solely on one for the most part. Just like music wasn't making me like money, basically. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And so I was like, well, I want to try something, that I'm resonating with that I can also like figure it out. And so I prayed on that and it kept coming to my head, buy this wood burner. I was wood burning in South America for some time. I have this old memory of when I was in first grade of someone wood burning something, and I thought it was so fascinating. And so this little voice in my head's like, buy the wood burner, buy the wood burner. I'm like, all right, fuck it. I'm buying the wood burner. So I bought it. And as soon as I bought it, you know, I, I just started getting clients, and it was for these little like
mm,
horse tags. I was at a horse farm at the time, and people were seeing it. And so some friends and family were like, oh, I'll buy a little tag, 40, 60 bucks, blah, blah. Soon enough, the machine's paid for. I'm like, wow, I'm really enjoying this, getting better at it. Like any process, like it's so important to see improvement in the skill. Like, is my time that I'm spending on it, is it bearing fruit? Like on some intangible level, I need to know I'm improving at it. Um, that goes with any art form, I imagine. Like you as a writer, like you're putting hours and hours into writing. You want to know that your words, your choice of words and sentences and paragraphs are doing their job even better as you continue practicing that skill. So yeah, one thing led to another, and yeah, now I'm selling pieces and really enjoying the process, and also doing a bunch of other things, learning about home renovation, doing a lot of
mm,
odd jobs, like more hard skills. I'm learning some hard skills too at this time, which is its own art form. I mean, I have such an appreciation for people who can like tile a floor and make it look beautiful. We take a lot of these things that we live around for granted, like, oh wow, just walls. But it's like, how hard it is to make a wall look straight and to sand it and to get it like smooth. That's a lot of work that people have like taken time to learn that skill. But so I'm just interested in those kinds of skills as well, because those translate into other options for, artistic expression that also make money.
mhm,
So yeah, I've living as a cheap kind of poor nomad for so long. I'm ready to start changing that pattern a bit and finding myself in better financial situations,
mm,
that I can eventually afford to provide for a woman or a child. That's in
mhm,
my 3 5 year plan. So
mhm. Yeah, man. Well, I hope it, and I know that it will eventually work out for you. It's funny because we imagine ourselves. I imagine myself, um, who I am today. Like who, as I imagine myself in the from past David to who I am today, doesn't necessarily line up with what my expectations were. Um, and in some ways, it's much better, but it's also very different. So, like financially, we could say in one domain of life, that's been also a challenge for me. And I also resonate with this wanting to create something that's valuable for other people and also fills me up with
mhm.
some sort of, purpose and fulfillment. And I think that's kind of what life is. Not, I wouldn't say all about, but it does seem to play a pretty big role in my life, is trying to merge the survival aspect of life with some sort of higher divine drive, you could say. And so
Yeah,
it's amazing to see someone else, and I've always felt connected to you in this way, is you are also on that path, because I think it is easy to fall into, wanting to just make money for money's sake, and that can also have its own benefits. Um, it's so hard for me to give up that wanting to fulfill that divine purpose, which is just a bunch of stories in my head. I also recognize that in some element, this is the divine. This is this moment, independent of whatever future I'm imagining. This moment has everything in it that I've always been looking for, that I've always been seeking. And yet still it's like, the imagination plays a role, I think, in my behavior. Um,
Definitely, definitely. And also, like, doing those things, like, for example, doing that thing just for money, when that's not actually coming from, my core, then I'm inviting all sorts of other distractions that keep me away from recognizing the divine in the moment. I mean, you and I both know
mm,
how in some ways how challenging it can be to recognize the divine in the moment. You know what I mean? It takes effort in some ways. And in some ways it doesn't take effort. It's this paradox, but if I'm not following what's at my core, then then I feel like I'm running away from ever realizing the divine in the moment, however that's going to arise.
mm,
So,
yep.
one thing that's been very useful I'll share is coming up is I've been studying my design, my human design, and
Mm,
you and I've dabbled in this before, but I kind of been going a little deeper into it, into my strategy on it. And my strategy is wait to respond, which essentially means the world will provide you opportunities and some sort of stimulus that you can then respond to after going through your emotional cycle. So, as an Aries, I'm getting kind of woo here, but as an Aries, I'm an initiator. So, I like starting projects. I like starting things and getting things going, blah, blah. So, I'm just trying to step back from that. I'm just not starting as many things, or rather, I'm waiting for some sort of stimuli within or without, and then just kind of allowing that to process. And it's been working very well for me. Not trying to go out and get the thing and do the thing, but just like doing what I want to do and then setting some intentions and asking, where's the stimulus? Give me something to respond to, basically, to God or to the universe, and just seeing where that goes. And that's been very helpful, actually. It's been taking a lot of stress out of my life, thinking that I have to make things happen,
mm,
and that I have to plan it and be in some sort of control. So I guess in a way, it's a layer of relinquishing control.
mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that can be very challenging. Um, and what helps, yeah, I don't know. I guess what helps me with that is sitting, like sitting and really feeling. Like whether I'm sitting or moving, it doesn't matter. It's more of the felt sense, at least
Mm.
for me, that because I can be sitting and completely not feeling at all. I could be thinking, I could be imagining,
Yup.
and that's most of my life in some sense. But it is becoming more and more important for me to feel. And I think my movement practice is helping inform this as well. And my teacher Brian has been very helpful in this regard. But the movements that we're doing in life aren't really what's, I guess, most important. I would say it would be, are they coming from a felt sense while we're doing those movements? So, I could be helping someone or doing something that objectively seems very wonderful, but inside I could be suffering deeply because of that, because I'm not feeling, I'm like pent up, I have a lot of resistance. And on the other hand, I think I could be doing anything with sort of this felt sense of tuning into my sensations, and from that emerges, whatever emerges, but I feel a lot less I guess, suffering, you could say.
Hmm.
And just being reminded of that over and over again, I feel like is what's guiding me because I tend to, I've always liked Eckhart Tolle ever since I first read A New Earth. And I never read The Power of Now, but I imagine he's saying more or less the same stuff. And what Eckhart's saying and what all of us are saying really is nothing new. Um, but yeah, just this idea of what what energies are occurring tend to keep occurring and want to keep that momentum going. So when I'm doing, I want to keep doing. When I'm sitting, I want to keep sitting. Like once I reach that spot, if that makes sense. If
Hmm.
I'm awake, I want to just keep staying awake all night. If I'm asleep, I want to just keep sleeping all day. And so it's been difficult for me recently to break that energetic force. And again, and what I'm coming back to is that seated or that feeling, whether it's standing or sitting, it could be either one, but just that's kind of the stopping of whatever energy is going on and beginning to feel that felt sense. And it's helping me reawaken into the truth of the moment, you could say.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess how much of that feeling um, resonates with kind of what you're going through.
Well, like what you said about momentum, I never heard it phrased quite that way. Uh, and what comes to mind is that you're right. Everything has this momentum and it wants to keep living. It wants to keep existing, whatever the thing is. And almost as a man, I feel that I have to see that momentum objectively and be able to shift gears at my will based on a myriad of different variables and needs and external circumstances. But I think that's kind of what separates an immature child that wants to keep playing. And when the adult comes and says, no, we got to come in and eat, or we got to do this or that, there's a bit of whining that goes on with that and suffering. Whereas the mature man understands from his core what needs to be done, what's the next step, how do I stop the momentum here and funnel it towards the next thing and just keep plodding along that path, not getting caught up in all of the lights and the sounds and the attractions, but that there is some sort of divine purpose that we have and
Hmm.
keeping that in the forefront.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. Well said. That was a good little thought connection that you started.
Well, yeah, and I like what you said about differentiating between kind of the inner child that exists within all of us and the maturing adult or the adult that's attempting to that really kind of knows what's best for
Right.
the child. And yeah, I think in some ways my inner child just wants to keep holding on to different elements of my life that is no longer serving it in a lot of ways. And that's it's kind of going through like a metaphorical death
Yes.
of
Yes.
kind of that that innocence and that play. And it's not to say that their play is, I think, is a very important part of life. But I do think kind of what you're saying is that the adult plays differently than a child plays.
Yes. Yes.
And that's like, what do you, how, if we were to put that into words, how would you think an adult plays differently than a child?
I think a child plays purely for play's sake. And I think an adult can play while also taking on a bunch of responsibility in service of their own growth and the people around them. So, and be conscious of that. A child will not be conscious of that and will just enjoy playing, which is a beautiful thing to witness. But I think that same attitude can be taken as an adult while also fixing the broken pipe
Mm,
or
mm,
going to work with a new challenge. You know what I mean? So maybe that's it. Maybe it's play incorporating with new challenges and responsibilities.
mm,
So the stakes are higher, but the reward is richer too. Not only am I enjoying this play, but wow, look at what I just did. This is beautiful. These people are served from it. My family is fed. All
mm,
of these different things. We can get fed even deeper as a playing adult, which is probably why it's harder to play as an adult because the reward is greater. It's got to be a better challenge. And so we see that just in our general society. I think that many have forgotten that playful attitude and just go and solve the puzzle, just go and work figuring it out. And keep saying solve the puzzle because it's a way that I've trained my mind to look at challenges in my life. If
mm,
I have any sort of emotional or physical challenges that I'm just struggling with, or patterns that I'm having difficulty breaking, helping to see it as a puzzle helps me objectify it in a way and get space from that. It's no longer me who has that issue. It's like, oh, this Bradley's going through this tough thing and he can't get out of this pattern. So what do I need? How can I adjust whatever variables are in my control to unlock this part of the puzzle? This is doable. This is not something that's impossible. If
mm.
if if another man can do it, here's another gem. If a one man can do it, another man can do it. Basically,
Yes.
anything, right?
Mm,
Anything. So seeing things as a puzzle, recognizing that if one person can do it, another I can do it, have been useful intellectual tools to kind of shut down the doubting mind,
mm,
which can take over sometimes. So, yeah, child plays for playfulness sake, and an adult, I think, takes on responsibilities and bigger challenges while also bringing that playfulness from childhood into the current state. It's like any journey. We never let go entirely of everything we learned. We just
mm.
keep bringing those things forward with us with new sets of challenges and responsibilities. So, I've never thought of that before. So I think we're in like a nice groove here where we're coming up with new insights, bro.
Yeah, I like it. I think you're onto something. And I really like this idea of the child almost unable to step out of the child's perspective. So the child
Mhm.
is completely in the moment in some sense and unable to see kind of like the future of what could be from or what the child could be, whereas a mature adult plays with this sense of overarching ability to step out of the inner child's perspective.
Yes.
And yeah, and in some ways that is the cause of suffering, but it's also this beautiful awakening in some sense because it's, I don't know, whereas a child is purely involved in the survival mechanisms, an adult has integrated those survival mechanisms into its core behaviors and being, and is now able to, um, I guess, build more layers on top of that foundation.
Yeah, I think that's the word for it too, is layers. What came to mind is that, and we're saying adult, but I gotta say, even though there's a bunch of grown ass people around me, I wouldn't consider them emotionally mature adults, because they haven't integrated what they learned as the child. You
Mm,
have to bring forth that playfulness in order to, move forward basically. And so I'm seeing a lot of adult bodies that are still figuring things out. You know what I mean? And then what am I trying to say? A lot of children in adult bodies that are still operating with a very simplistic nervous system. And I'm bringing nervous system in it because I think that's a big part of it is taking on new layers, new complexities, and it
mm,
takes a more advanced nervous system to do that. Takes a cleaner vessel, a cleaner mind, a more flexible vessel, a more flexible mind, because there's so much information all the time going on all around us, and for us to be able to process that efficiently, as in taking enough in but also outputting that, so we're not just storing a bunch of things that we're inputting.
mm,
We have to have the channels clear, and when the channels start getting clearer and clearer, then we can be playful and take on new challenges. And with
mm.
each subsequent victory, that we're able to be present, be playful, and do good for everyone else around us and ourselves, it's like we get rewarded for that in this life and the next. And we get more fun challenges. Like, how do I fully surrender? Like, what would that look like if I set my mind to something and fully surrendered? Like, that's an adventure in and of itself. Like, we don't even have to go to Nepal to have that kind of adventure. You know what I mean? Like, miracles can occur in our day-to-day life. Just
Mhm.
little synchronicities that compound and become major synchronicities, and all of a sudden we don't even recognize, like, how do we get here? Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Let's just keep following, the breadcrumbs and just see where this leads.
Yes.
So, but we
Yeah,
did
what
go on hell of an adventure in Nepal,
we
and
did, we
just
did.
you just finished a book on that.
And
Maybe you should
we
say a
will
little
get
about
there.
that. Okay.
We will get there. Because I want to stay real quick on this idea of like clearing the channels of the body, have building a robust nervous system or like an anti-fragile nervous system, you could say. And in some ways, I think I'm curious what your perspective on this idea is, that I feel like all of those perspectives are important, but and that there's a perspective even above that, which is the importance of awareness in influencing those different aspects of the body and mind and experience. So whereas like I see awareness being almost the top of the pyramid, you could say, to where the more awareness that we have of what we're feeling, like that's what's influencing the nervous system, that's what's influencing the channels of the body or the mind, you could say. Yeah, and maybe I'm not, it doesn't sound like I'm explaining it very well, but I think, at least in my experience, that
Fumbling.
what's that? Keep
Like,
fumbling?
keep
Yeah,
fumbling,
yeah.
keep going, keep going.
That in my experience, if I can, you know, intellectually thinking about improving the nervous system or clearing the channels of the body, or even like making a diet at the intellectual level, like, oh, here's what I should eat, here is all of that seems to be, I think it plays its role and it has its importance in different phases of life. And at the same time, I'm seeing the importance of approaching all of those perspectives with a different methodology, which is just feeling and operating off of that. Um, I guess with this higher awareness that is then influencing the body and the mind. So like
Yes.
if I can remain aware that right now I my nervous system feels tight, or like I feel not fully relaxed in some sense, then that awareness is what's helping drive changes to the to all these different underlying mechanisms of experience, to where I think it's not as well. Maybe they both are. It's like circular type of influence that, if I'm creating conditions for what I should and should not eat, that is influencing my awareness to some extent, and then I can use that awareness to influence what I'm eating. But I don't know if what I'm saying
I
is
think
making
you
any sense.
touched on it right there. I think you
Okay.
touched on the relationship between what the thing is and the
Mm,
awareness and how they are influencing each other.
mm,
Just by being more aware of my sensations, I've attracted different tools that test the limits of my feelings and how deeply I can feel that interoceptive quality. So, and that's just and that this is also layered with our own individual predilections and the way each individual mind and what they're attracted to. But I think you think you hit it on the head there, that just our simple awareness of what we're feeling wants to grow and has and wants to gain momentum. Like anything, it wants to gain momentum, and it will bring us to new information, new practices that will help awareness grow. And I'll give you a super gross example. Like, I practice this thing called Paida Lajin, which is this, it's like a hitting and slapping, right?
mm.
And that is a very interesting practice for my nervous system. You know what I mean? It brings a lot of different sensations to feel and to be comfortable with. Or, Vipassana, a 10-day silent retreat, that helps us feel and stretch our awareness even further than what it was before, and grow stronger, and like you said, clear the channels and just go deeper and deeper into new layers. um
Yes.
yeah, I think you fumbled right into the touchdown, honestly, that the awareness influences the practices and the practices influence the awareness.
Yeah, it's hard to even create separations between the concepts and the things. And I'm curious what your definition of awareness is, because I think I want to clarify what I think mine is. And because when I say feeling, like, awareness isn't just feeling to me. I think feeling is very important, but awareness is it's almost like consciousness itself. It's I think they're related. And, you know, awareness being related to not only thought and, imagination and sensation and feeling, but the whole gamut of experience, I feel like, is awareness. And that is the thing that we're all attempting to get a better hold on. And yet you can't, there's nothing to hold on to. So
Right.
there's a paradox in some sense, but I'm curious what your definition of awareness is, and if it lines up with what I'm speaking to.
Well, what comes to mind is that awareness is some knowing of a movement, and that movement can look like a sensory movement in our bodies, outside of us, a sound, a thought, an image. It's all movement, though. And what's coming to mind is that there's so much in the field that's moving. And the more that we can be aware of all of it, then we actually start to separate and even penetrate to a place that's outside of movement
Hmm.
while we're still while the avatar is still experiencing movement. There's an unshakable quality underneath all of the all of the movement that we can be aware of, and to varying degrees. And so awareness, I think, encapsulates both the kind of awareness that is moving and vibrating, but also the awareness that doesn't move. And I guess
Yes.
awareness, it would be the quality of that knowing quality of it is how I'm best able to define that right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's an important part of what maybe I was missing was that, that's that almost centeredness, um, to the entirety of experience that's also a non-experience. It cannot be it can be pointed to, and yet it can never be experienced because there's nothing to experience there. It's the thing that's always with us and that we carry
Yeah.
around and that we can always come back to because it is unmoved, because it's unchanged. And I had this, you could say reminder or insight or whatever the other day, which was, like no wonder I suffer so much in different areas of life because I'm trying to constantly change something about myself and
Yeah, right.
thinking that this change is going to be the thing that makes me happy or that makes me finally content. And yet there's no, all that is some sort of superficial game in some sense. And not that it's superficial and not that it's a game because it's very important and it's all that we have. This is life. But yet the thing I was searching for was the thing that has never changed, that has never moved, and it's always been there.
Right.
And anchoring more and more towards that as was a good reminder for me.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've
You're like,
experienced.
gee whiz, no wonder I'm suffering so much. I'm fucking crazy.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
just
that reminds me quite
identifying.
a bit.
I can get caught up in forgetting, what's been there and you know wanting to change something that doesn't need to be changed in the first place in some sense.
Yeah, especially coming from a place where we think it needs to be changed, right? Because then we haven't gone through the first step of just accepting that that is what it is in that moment. We've already skipped steps wanting it to be different, and anything that's coming from that kind of energy is just going to create more suffering,
Mm.
um, because we're not actually hitting the mark. It's like we're pulling the bow, and instead of lining up to see exactly where we need to aim and calming down, we're just flinging the bow like, all right, I'm gonna shoot it here, I'm gonna shoot it here, I'm gonna shoot it there. And it's just very unlikely that we're gonna hit the mark in any skillful way without first, like, where's the target? Well, the target is first just accepting that this is the situation. And what does that look like? Well, that's accepting it on your own emotional status about it. Okay, well, I don't like this. I'm accepting that I don't even like the situation. I'm accepting, what is it? What is the situation? To the depth and layers that we can accept the situation and be aware of it. That's where we make the best decisions on how to move forward. And but yeah, wanting something to be different is like already that's the definition of insanity, right? Like
Hmm.
that's probably the most succinct definition of insanity right there, is just wanting things to be different than what they are. And I want your listeners to understand that doesn't mean we can't go out there and make changes in our life. You know, and it's not like a where we just lean back and just let life happen. No, I definitely want to be a participant in life fully, but coming from the place that it needs to be changed, or trying to articulate
Mm-hmm.
myself, that I guess that I said it already. It has to be accepted with awareness before. That's just that's the hierarchy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it starts.
That's
And
so,
then,
sorry
yeah,
to interrupt, but that's fascinating because I think that's truth. That's very truthful. Is that in order for something to change first, it has to be fully accepted
yeah,
that this is where we're at
yeah,
and this is where I'm at.
yeah. And that journey of just acceptance is like, that's there's a lot to unpack even in that. How honest am I willing to be with myself? And I'll tell you, this past year, especially these past few months, I've had to accept a lot of things about myself that I didn't want to look at, you know, and very hard to do that. But it's just like any other skill. You learn how to accept things that you don't like accepting. Say that's the skill set, accepting shit you don't want to accept.
Mm,
Okay. That first thing you got to accept is probably going to be the worst thing, but it gets better and better the more you can accept it, because then you can actually start making tangible change. And all of a sudden you have this new skill set where you can accept and surrender shit that's hard to change, or that you don't want to look at. You can accept that. You can even start with, I accept that I don't fucking want to look at this. You know, I accept that I'm going to even pretend to be asleep from it. You know what I mean? That's better than not, than just ignoring it. You
mm,
know what I'm saying? Like, even accepting that I'm too weak or lazy or or scared to look at this deeper within myself, but I want to look at this deeper at some point. You know what I mean? That's much better than just pretending it doesn't exist. And it feels, you know, it feels like a solid little tippy toe step forward, even. You know what I
mm,
mean? Whereas
mm-hmm.
just ignoring it just allows the garbage to build up, which actually pushes us back. So I guess that's a good point that people need to hear, is accepting that they don't even want to accept it is still moving in the right direction.
Mm. Accepting that you don't want to accept it.
Right. Right. That's, you can start there. People can, and I've started there many times. You know, when you start to see the problem, and it's like,
Mm,
fuck, I'm not ready to challenge to tackle that right now. But at least facing that I'm not ready to tackle that right now is better than, you know, going stuff my face or get high and pretend that that's not even there, or whatever my coping mechanism, my unskillful mechanism is. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I do
So
know what you mean. Yeah,
it's
that.
at least putting it on the to-do list, David. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Mm,
at least we're gonna write the fucker down. You know, I'm not
yeah,
putting the date on it yet, but at least I wrote it down.
yeah. It's a different level of kind of what we were talking before, a different level of awareness.
Yeah.
Um, that at least I'm aware that this is something that's happening, and yeah, I'm not ready for it right now to change, but it is. I don't know, even it's funny, even just accepting that I'm not ready to change, it starts to open me up to change a little bit.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. The next thing can even be, you know, I want to change. So I'm scared, but I'll even invite tools and people that will help me make this change, and
mm,
resources that will help me make this change, and kind of just see what happens. But if we ignore it, it's like door closed, bro. Slammed, closed. But if we just like keep it open, like, okay, I accept that there's probably a monster behind that door, but I'm just gonna keep it open and just see what happens. It's gonna open up little more at a rate that we're comfortable with.
Hmm.
And I think as men, sometimes we want to just get in there and fucking tackle the monster. And sometimes we can do that. We can face the dragon in its entirety. But some of the dragons need a little more preparation and need a little more skill in maneuvering because they're long, old dragons that know how to battle. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They're not
Hmm.
patterns that are going to fall away easily. You might have to just open the door sometimes just to get a good look at it and then close it again or leave it
Yeah.
cracked.
Yeah,
You know what I
it was a big dragon. You know,
mean?
that was
Okay, at
true.
least you have a better idea of what you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Mm,
Um,
mm,
but it does, like, all comes back to that awareness, bro, and just trying to cultivate that skill like every single day in some way.
mm-hmm.
And that's what's so great about awareness is that you can cultivate it every single day. You can cultivate it every single moment. It's a skill that you can bring with you in every single endeavor of your life, of your waking life.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that?
I mean, there's a bunch of different practices, right? From meditation and just feeling within the body to noting, for example, which is a
Mm,
highly
mm.
intellectual process, but is very useful, just helping to build space between your environment and reality and the person witnessing it instead of thinking that you are Bradley, you are David, and that's it. No, there's a witness here that is experiencing David, experiencing Bradley in this world. And just by noting things like, okay, this is a computer screen, this is David on the computer. Oh, this is me on the computer. I'm in a room. Just kind of basically taking stock of what your immediate experience is can be very useful at
Mm-hmm.
a gross intellectual level, bringing awareness in. And that turns into more subtle things like, oh, I feel my hand. Oh, I feel my arm. Oh, I feel my whole body right now, actually. And oh, I feel like a tension in my forehead or, a slight pain in my left foot.
Mm.
And those thoughts and notes can go very fast in the head. It's not like you have to actually verbalize them in the head. They just turn into these knowings, and all of a sudden you're able to notice more and know more and be aware of more. The skill grows, the skill continues to grow, and kind of circling back, we can take on new layers, more information, and the more complex layers we take on, the more information, the more that we can start to serve ourselves more skillfully in this reality and serve others through that process. um, I guess the question that arises for me is, well, why? Why wake up? Why wake up?
Mm.
Well, at some point I start noting enough and start noticing and becoming aware that I'm adding a lot of unnecessary tension and unpleasantness to my experience. And I want to eradicate that in a way that doesn't add to it, which becomes kind of tricky, as you and I know, because the more you don't want something, you actually attract that. Like
Mm.
if I'm really pushing something away, that's also not balanced. We've lost the acceptance and the surrender of the situation when we're trying to push things away so adamantly. So it's this fine balance between wanting to alleviate my suffering and tension, but also understanding that that's part of the alleviation process, is experiencing the tension, is experience the suffering.
Yeah, that they go hand in hand,
Right.
and that this was also one of my, I guess, lessons learned from writing the book was this idea, and you've even talked about this for me, so I might have even picked this up from you or just my own experience or other people's teachings or what have you, but this idea of ridding ourselves completely of suffering or of unpleasant sensations even, because I do think there's a difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But ridding myself of unpleasant sensations it's an entirely useless goal to have because those sensations inform my experience and give me information to, they might be suffering in some sense, they might be painful, but you've heard of this difference between what is suffering and what is pain. So pain
Right.
being more of a physical thing, suffering being more psychological. And so yeah, my body might be feeling unpleasantness, but all of this is good information for me to have, because then I can begin to work on what that information is being provided to me, and yeah, begin to use it and not and let it flow through me rather than resist and oh, I need to get rid of this thing in order to be happy, which is you
Right.
know the different perspective of no, this is actually aiding in my own happiness.
That's it. That's it.
I just
And a
might
lot
not
of
be
the time,
listening to it. Hmm.
right.
Hmm.
And when we're feeling anything, it's what's coming up to be felt and to pass away. So when we're feeling unpleasantness, if your first reaction is to remove that unpleasantness, then actually the most skillful thing to do is to feel it as unconditionally as you can.
Hmm.
That's the irony, is because the
Hmm.
people who don't want to feel it, who want to repress it, are actually deeply attached to it and will do what they can to push it down
Hmm.
in their efforts to not feel it. So it's it's kind of fucked up actually.
It's very fucked up, man. And at least speaking for myself, that thing has been sleep,
Mm,
recently, which is, let's say I'm not falling asleep easily, uh, which has been happening to me recently. Um, and because I'm not falling asleep, I'm also resisting myself not falling asleep. Whereas like life could be a lot better. This is myself giving me advice right now, which is,
please.
just yeah, you're not falling asleep. Don't That's completely fine. You need to be feeling those feelings of awakeness right now and not resisting that.
Right.
And granted, there are some things I could also do to improve my environment and set better conditions for sleep. It's not to completely negate that, but in that moment, when what's done has been done, further resistance upon what is not helping.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And I guess that's where our support network comes in. That's
Mm,
when we start opening up to people and start asking for help. I need you to hold me accountable. I'm doing XYZ and it's taking a toll on my sleep, which is taking a toll on these other parts of my life. And, I need something, whatever it is. Because I hear you. I go through that in different realms of my life as well, where sometimes I'll just eat way more food than I need to. And that will set up kind of a snowball effect that will affect different parts of my life. And uh, truthfully, lately, I haven't been sleeping as much as I would like to, and not being able to fall asleep is easy. But there are things that I know are keeping me awake. The
mm,
screens, maybe eating later than I need to eat. Um, Talking to people, just not like coming into my own
mm,
space and down regulating for my night's rest. And so, but yeah, being nervous about it, and we know this, right? We've sat enough courses and heard it enough times, like especially when we're more meditative, like we need way less sleep. And being nervous about not getting enough sleep just adds more and more tension to ourselves, which is what you were talking about, just like resisting the fact that, all right, I'm wide awake right now. I'm not able to sleep. Practical tip, feeling my hands and feet um, definitely helps to relax me. I also have this mat. Oh, you know about this mat. I've got this
Hmm.
shopping mat, right? That I bought in Australia. I will tell you that thing has paid itself over 1,000 times. I use that. I've used it a ton of times, but it's a very nice tool to relax me. It really helps, and I fall asleep with that thing on sometimes and wake up and like, you know, basically pull my scarred back off of it.
Also, for people who might not know what you're talking about, it's a mat that has all these like indentions
There's
in it,
spines,
right?
there's spikes, there are these plastic
Spikes.
spikes. Yeah,
Okay, spikes. So they're coming out and
like
they're poking
acupressure,
into you. Yeah.
right? And it's kind of painful at first, but it becomes very relaxing,
Hmm.
which is a great kind of analogy to pain in general. Um, there's a lot of blessing to pain. When we feel pain, the body sends all sorts of healing hormones and all sorts of mechanisms start firing off in the body where there's pain.
Hmm.
And by feeling it, we allow that process to unfold on its own. But by resisting it, we really just delay and enlargen those effects.
Right. Yeah, it does seem to be a reoccurring theme in some sense that pain is the pathway to like peace. In that, whether it's sitting for an hour straight in one position of meditation, going through a lot of pain in that, and eventually reaching some sort of center. Also relates to, we did some more cold plunging over the winter, and that's, the first minute or two, it's rough, especially if it's like, the water's 40 degrees, 45,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
But then you do, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you
We
just,
I definitely did a lot of cold plunging this winter too.
oh, good, good. How's that?
Well, it's exactly how you're describing it.
A lot of suffering, and then, the moment there's like a barrier, like the one has to pass through,
Yeah,
and then it's like, okay, I'm okay. And that those practices like that then spill out into everyday life,
right.
outside of that scenario, that condition scenario.
Well, and you said pain is the pathway to peace. Another way to actually word that is the things that you've been avoiding are the pathway to peace.
Mm,
And that just
mm,
happens to be for most of us pain. But pain is totally subjective, and the texture of it is entirely different for each and every one of us. But there are some common things, obviously, like most people don't like to be cold, you know.
mm.
Like, just we don't like it, and I don't like
Yeah.
it. I do it, but I don't like it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I like how it feels after. I like doing it because it's quick and you get a lot of results. It's the hardest thing you're gonna probably do all day, and it probably takes 5-10 minutes and less. And so, yeah, what's the thing? That's another thing. It's a very masculine thing. Like, what's the thing I've been avoiding
Mm,
and that I need to take care of and do that?
mm,
And we can even meditate on that. I think a lot of people, including myself, forget to ask themselves questions. Ask yourself, like, what do I need to do? What am I avoiding? Just sit there for 10 minutes and see what comes up. You'll have a to-do list in no time, and you'll know exactly the direction you need to take. Like, just what do I need to do? Super practical advice.
mm,
And also self-dialogue, just talking to yourself, having time and space where you feel safe enough just to have a conversation with yourself.
hmm.
It's so powerful. Go on a walk and just start talking to yourself. You'll figure shit out. about yourself and how to move forward in a way that serves you best. You'll get all your concerns out, like about your decisions, et cetera, et cetera. Just keep plugging at it and talking, and it will work itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, man, what's making me laugh and smile when you're saying this is this idea of how there's all these different tools out there and all these different perspectives on how to approach life or how to make life more tolerable or how to make life amazing. And no single perspective encompasses all of the tools, if that makes sense. Like we have
Mm,
to be the thing that goes out and seeks the tools or allows the tools to come to us. And specifically, what was making me smile when you were saying that was, like within the container of Vipassana, like using that as a tool, that that alone doesn't, even that doesn't have what you are speaking to right now, which is this tool of, talk to yourself, use this self dialogue, ask yourself
right,
questions. Like that would be unheard of advice at a
right,
Vipassana meditation retreat. In
right.
fact, it would probably go against a lot of what they're saying. But it is, it makes me smile to know that we are able to step out of these containers, we see how they all relate to each other and how
Yes,
we can use all of them. And depending on our specific circumstances in the moment, and that there's no black and white solution to really anything. It just depends on where we're at.
yes,
So,
definitely.
mhm.
Yeah, and being able to like move from tool to tool
Mm.
and just know that this is the right tool for this, and having some solid tools basically to do that. Yeah, I get a lot out of self-dialogue, a
Mm.
lot out of it. I wish I did it more. I want to do it more. I will do it more,
Mm.
uh, because it's it's a very quick way to just process a lot of shit,
Yeah.
real quickly. It's like taking your best friend and plugging him in
Mm.
and just bouncing all the things off, like real quick,
Mhm.
like just separating myself into these two people, three, four, doesn't matter, and just talking it out until I get to the best solution or whatever it is, or feel better about a certain thing, or feel that I'm okay, I'm a little more in control of the situation as far as I can, you know, as far as discipline. Sometimes I wouldn't say control, but sometimes I just need to exercise more discipline in my life in certain areas. And I don't know, just like be your fucking cheerleader, be your own best friend, your own fucking cheerleader,
Mm.
because no one else is gonna really do it. And honestly, it's weak in a sense to expect that of the world. You know what I mean? Even of our women. Our women are there to support us in many ways, but they're not the catch-all be-all for us. They've got their own individual lives that they are working their own shit through, and we got to do the same and be
Mhm.
strong for ourselves and be gentle and compassionate with ourselves too.
Yeah. Well said, man. Yeah. It's as much as I would like for other people to solve my problems for me, it's just not going to happen that, everyone has their own lives and problems that they're dealing with. And any amount of support that I can get from someone else is just such a blessing that,
Right.
or any amount of support that I can offer to someone else is it's so, yeah, I think it's very special. So,
Agreed. And I'll say one more thing that's coming up
mm.
is the more we do these things and organize our own life and our own, whatever our growth is, we become an organizing force for everyone we touch, for everyone we come in contact with. And we don't even know, it's not like we have to see the end result of that. But if say we're solving, just to keep it linear for people to understand, say we're solving a level 50 puzzle right now, right? And we come in contact with the world and we meet people that are solving, say, a level 10, 15 puzzle. Well, we've solved some of those puzzles already, and it's that blueprint for solving that puzzle is within us. And by sharing dialogue with other people, or even just being in the same space with them, that helps them solve their puzzle. It's like igniting them in a way, you know, when we start getting our fire going within, that starts igniting others in a very real sense.
Hmm.
So yeah, and we're also privileged to be around people who have solved more puzzles than us and help us along the way as well. So we're all connected, as cliched as
Mm.
it is. It's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is true, man. I know it's true. I've
Yeah.
felt it, and yeah, man. It's yeah, I feel connected to you in this way as well, as someone who's solved solved a lot of puzzles and who's currently solving. I think those go hand in hand
Hmm.
with just the life experience. That I think it's important to have friends with us. I think it's important for me to have to, friends with me um, on this in this life, because it can. I'm like you, man. I feel like I could just be happy in some sense, just isolating myself, and
Yeah,
in some ways that's where I feel comfortable. Even doing this podcast, like it's been a while since I've done one. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of resistance to doing something that I know that I can do and that's not that difficult. But I mean, it takes effort and it takes, setting up the thing and showing up. Um, yeah, so I think it's important to have support from others, and I appreciate your support, and yeah, and my own support too.
definitely. I appreciate our friendship. It's always a fun time catching up with you, and I
Mm.
feel like it reminds me of all of these insights, and it just brings out a very cool side of myself. You seem to bring it out, and I enjoy listening to myself and to you when we're speaking, you know what I mean? Because I do
Yeah, I
have some
got it.
space right now. I have some space between like
Mm-hmm.
Bradley and the witness, and I love seeing what you're bringing out. I love hearing what you're bringing out of me. One
Mm-hmm.
thing that you just brought out is you were resisting the podcast, you know, setting the things up, et cetera, et cetera. And we all do that to some degree or another. It helps me to break down the thing that I'm resisting into smaller tasks. And even something like a dragon, like setting up the podcast situation, can still have sometimes so much resistance. You know, it seems small, but it's like, oh, like I was just recently creating a poll for the men's group to figure out what day and time. And it's like, oh, I have to open the computer and look for a survey site and like maybe sign up for it. And like these stupid mundane things just like totally disinterested me. You know what I mean? I had so much resistance towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And what helps me is breaking it down. Okay, well, like even just knowing that, okay, I'm gonna have to open the computer and then look for a site and then do this or that. Okay, we're looking at probably 15, 20 minutes. And just like having that awareness of what it's gonna take helps me face the dragon a bit. Like, okay, this dragon's got 3-inch teeth, got some decent armor on it, looks like, big tail. How do I prepare for this, basically, and break it down into the smallest components that I need to be
Mm-hmm.
able to go in more confidently. But if I don't know what I'm looking at, I don't have the pieces, I don't know what they are, then that dragon could be a 5-foot dragon, but I'm acting like it's a massive 20-foot dragon because I just
Right.
haven't identified it and been like, looked at it a bit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. Even though I know kind of what the dragon looks like, I guess there's always going to be that sort of unknown quality to the dragon, you
Mm,
could say, which is, what could happen. There's just
right.
there's and it's not what I guess what I'm speaking to is was setting up this podcast. Um, it's just showing up. It's just, like there wasn't resistance to knowing that I should do it. Like I knew that I wanted to do it and I wanted you on and to talk with you about life updates and all this and see where it goes. But there's just knowing that who knows what could happen. Like, I don't know. Like, I there's a process emotionally that I have to move through,
Right.
leading up to these types of events. And it's like anything else. It's a muscle that can be developed. And so, whereas, I think this might be somewhere around the 50th episode of this podcast, but at a point I was doing it week to week. I think it's been like a year or more since I've last had someone on. But at a certain point, you get into the groove, and it's no big deal showing up to these things. Um, but just because that muscle hadn't been worked in so long, there's an inner trust that I guess I have in myself, which is you've done it before. It's gonna be fine. Just show up. There's still some anxiety around not working that muscle. That muscle was kind of weak, and so it feels good to do the things that what you were speaking to before, doing the things that we've been avoiding, doing the things that are difficult or could be painful, because over time that muscle does strengthen. Um, so yeah.
Well said. Well, I'm glad you decided to exercise the muscle. It's a great way. It's a great way to produce content, and we catch up simultaneously. We check a lot of boxes in this way. I like it.
Hmm. And I did want to ask you, Bradley, how does it feel to be in yet another book written by me?
Oh, well, I guess it's old hat by now, huh?
Just to be expected at this point.
I love I love playing off the antagonist riff. I just think it's so great. It's inspired me in many ways. I even wrote a lyric in a song. It was like, I'm an antagonist with a heart of gold. And every time I
Mm,
think of that lyric, I think of you writing it. And it's true. Like the people in our lives that we're close to in those times, they're the ones that bring out the things. And they are, the antagonist. They're antagonizing the crap to come up for us to grow from.
mm.
So since it's written from your perspective, obviously I'm somewhat of an antagonizing character. If I were to have written the book, obviously you would be the antagonist.
And that's kind of where I wanted to take this was, if
I'm a
what
victim of circumstances, David. Understand.
it's like, yeah, talk about those circumstances, and whether it's my first book or the second one. Yeah, how would I'm not sure what the question is here. Like, if it's how would you have written it differently, or what did I get wrong about Bradley, or what, if you were to write the book about Bradley, what would it look like? Um, Something to that effect.
I think in a nutshell, it's basically like I could think of a few different things that I might change here or that, but basically what it points to is like, well, if it were me, I'd be more the protagonist, basically.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? It's like it doesn't really matter what the thing is. Like, just I'm biased to viewing myself in a certain way, and that's viewed as more like the protagonist that I play in my life. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but it is interesting. Obviously, it's such a gift to read about myself from another's perspective that is very intimate to me, because your perspective of me is equally as valid as my perspective of me, and they're equally trivial. You know what I'm saying? They're just
Hmm.
perspectives. So there's useful information. So reading your works helps me to, it's just humbling to see myself in a different light when I see myself in a certain way that bolsters my ego at times, and to be the person that is doing the shitty things and not not being the best he can be, or you know what I mean, or however you're seeing me in that book. And of course you use it as a literary device as well, and maybe you use hyperbole in some situations, or at least what I think is hyperbole. It might not actually be hyperbole. And that's the gem. That's the gem for me, is that whether or not that's actually how you're seeing me, or if it's a literary device, it's like that's a valid perspective. And someone, it's the way I was acting in that situation, someone could definitely view that in that way, and that would be totally valid.
Hmm.
So, this book, I definitely am not the same antagonist as I was in Trail Provides, because you have other very interesting characters and elements going on to this. I was a big character in True Nature, but I wasn't as big of a character as I was in The Trail Provides. Um, so yeah, it was great, man. I'm gonna give it a reread here soon. I'm waiting for the initial wave to kind of pass, and then I'll reread it and do all the homework I want to do on it, leave a nice review. Like, I'm the dude in it, and we need to get some things straight here.
The
Yeah,
expose, the tell all. Yeah,
that's
that'd be interesting, man. Yeah, and I want to let you know that it's never been my intention to write you in as in as the antagonist of any story. That especially, I think I've learned more and more about writing, but trying to more effectively portray, especially you as your character, as like a co-protagonist, and like, someone
yeah,
who, and even someone who's, trying to help me grow, and also, me being someone who's trying to help you grow, or not trying, but like almost that it just happens,
yeah.
as the result of us being, close to each other. And yeah, and I think especially with this book, I wanted to bring out a little bit more of my own, um, failures in what in patterns that I see in myself that are leading to imbalances or being closed in in some situations. So yeah, I tried to get that across for.
You did get that across, and you got that across very well, and you did that in Trail Provides as well. There were moments of me being a strong antagonist, but you've always, in both of these works, you've definitely weaved me in as a co-protagonist, and yourself as an antagonist towards yourself. You've done that very well. I think you've done it even better in True Nature, like found that balance, where we are both, going through challenges, but also we're doing the work. We are going through the challenges,
Mhm.
and you did that very well. Uh, I'm excited to reread it. I really am. I think it's been, when did you send me that last edit? That was probably like November or something like that.
Maybe, yeah, a few
Oh,
months ago.
yeah, October, November. Yeah, we ordered a couple copies here. I'll have to get a signed copy or two from you too.
Nice. Appreciate
Um,
that, brother.
yeah, of course, of course. But yeah, what else do you want to talk about as far as True Nature?
Mm,
How are you feeling about its release? And it's been out, I guess, what, like a week now? A little longer than a week?
yes, I think it's been maybe a couple weeks,
It's been 2 weeks.
but maybe a couple days short of 2 weeks. I'm not sure, but anyways, yeah, man, it's been amazing just to have it out, into the world, and to, I think there's so many things that I'm hypercritical of myself in a lot of different ways, and so there's so many things that I want to keep, like, almost wouldn't let go of, in releasing the book. So like I wanted to keep working on certain elements of it, and but yet there was another part of me, a stronger part of me, that just wanted it, that knew it was ready, and that, art is not something that's ever finished, but it's just something you let go of. And I think this aspect of my life and this part and experience is something that I was ready to move on from. And yet so much of it is going to be built upon. So much of it will stay with me. But yeah, it's been great, man. I've received a lot of support. It's it's another reminder for me that the thing is never the goal. It's the process. And so there has been some like grieving, like some sadness of
Yeah,
like just putting it out there and knowing that, it's but it hasn't been to nearly the same extent as what I was grieving with the first book.
gotcha.
Um, to whereas with that book, I was like, I felt like I'd given up so much, um, or I'd put so much of my experience into the book. Um, sounds good. And that I was ready, or I'd put so much of my experience into that first book that I did not feel ready to write a second book. Um, I didn't know what that book would be, and it ended up being another huge adventure that we needed to go on. For anyone who's listening or who's watching this visually, Bradley needs to pee right now, so he's in the bathroom. But I'm going to keep talking because I'm long-winded. But with my second book, I feel as if I was totally ready to let this out and continue working on something new, and to where I now feel abundant with what my next project will be, and just dedicating myself to more of a process oriented approach rather than feeling as if I've ended up at some sort of destination and don't know what to do next. So that feels very good in some sense. Um, I wish I see shortcomings in myself with kind of the marketing that I'm doing. And so I'm looking around to kind of my peers and I'm saying, oh, wow, they're doing really good at selling books and getting their name out. And I seem to be falling short in a lot of those ways. But I think I feel comfortable and also challenged in some ways with kind of my own process and just accepting what is like, okay, I'm not like, this book hasn't put me into, I can just like retire now or anything like that. I don't think that was even ever one of my goals, but yeah, I do feel grateful for what's come back to me. And I think most of all, I just want people to just like read the book, like there's that feeling of effort. I imagine you feel the same thing with like wood burning. Let's say you put, like, if you weren't to commission a piece, but if you were to create a piece from your own heart, almost something that no one's asking for, but that you just create, and that you want to sell that piece. You want other people to enjoy that.
Right.
Um, and so I kind of have that same feeling of, I want other people to enjoy it, like pick it up and read it and have a conversation around that.
Yeah.
Because it's, I think one of the main reasons why I write is to connect with other people and feel heard. Because I don't speak a lot other than on this podcast with you. Um, I'm very comfortable with listening to others and just allowing their voices to be heard. And I think writing is my outlet to say things. And so that feels good. And I'm looking forward to connecting with anyone who's read it.
Well, I definitely encourage you to market it more and to just, Trail provides and True Nature to just pump things out about it and just test the market and just keep experimenting with it. I mean, I know it can feel old hat to do like marketing the same thing over and over, but there's so no, there's so many people that haven't seen your content. So,
Hmm.
like for example, you got 1,000 followers on Instagram, for example. Those 1,000 followers might get annoyed that you're pumping the same thing about True Nature or Trail Provides, you know what I mean? But who cares? You know what I mean? Just like get it out there, recycle, repurpose, repost, just like keep pumping out the content and keep learning from it until it hits, bro. Because I really think between the trail provides and true nature, you can hit something. You've hit strings with so many people that have read the book, and why not many more? Why not? Why can't it support you fully? Why can't it support you fully? You know, as a as a prosperous writer,
Mm.
everyone I've talked to has read your books, has deeply enjoyed them, has enjoyed how easy of a read they are. Like they just want to devour it in the same day that they open it. Like there's something very calming about your expression of writing coming from you, David. And however you can get that across, that's what the marketing challenge is, right? And I'm in that same challenge, right? There's so many
Mm.
people that haven't heard my music, that haven't seen my art. And I think what I'm putting out is great. I think what you're putting out is great. So we just have to keep using, like, just keep experimenting with it. You know what I mean? If someone
Yeah.
can do it, so can I. And it's like, yeah, I'm resisting that aspect of my own art form is the marketing thing. And but I feel good when I dive into it and I get more information, like, okay, people like this or that or whatever. You know what I mean? Let's just keep going with this. And all it takes is one thing to spark fire. Once that one thing sparks fire, then you've got the fire. You know what I mean? And that's
Mm-hmm.
all we're doing right now. Our little marketing is us like, we're like, we got the Tinder. We're just like
I'm
trying to get
cold over
warm.
here.
Yeah, we're just trying to make a spark because we know what we have is great. And I think through the process of marketing, it's almost like our process of believing in ourself greater and greater, that it is
Mm.
great what we're doing. We've done a lot of work to base, because it's the book, it basically encapsulates the art form, whatever it is, encapsulates our entire experience, right? And you and I both know that we've done our work and it's continually going, but we have a lot of work that we've done that is imbued in our art form. And granted, maybe the masses aren't even ready for it yet. Maybe we're ahead of we're pioneering some things a bit as far as the whole general population. But that's okay because when they catch up, there's going to be some great fucking content for them to see and to appreciate. But we have to have something in place and like keep making our fire known. So I encourage you to go into your marketing a little bit more and, take it more seriously, but also take it as play. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's a great way to create a full circle from where we started. It was, a lot of these elements of marketing are more, mature adult activities. Like it's not super fun to let's say create a campaign in Amazon keywords to like find readers. But kind of to what you're also saying, to what we were saying before, was that I think there are ways to, well, first off, like, something my movement teacher says is it doesn't have to be fun to be fun. And also that there are ways to make it fun. So like I have been enjoying kind of creating videos on Instagram and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And I've taken a lot of inspiration from you, so I appreciate that, especially with my latest one of wrapping the books. I thought what you're doing was amazing. Um,
cheers.
so yeah, man, I appreciate the support of telling me to take it seriously and to dive deeper into that because I do think yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to continue to share about this book, to share these ideas that we're talking about, because I do think what I'm realizing is kind of a book is an excuse to talk about things. And so there are a lot of themes and ideas in this book that I'm excited to talk with, you about and others. And so, yeah, and I want to encourage you to, it seems like I've already taken it to heart and that you don't really need much encouragement because I've seen it from you that, and it's funny like to watch the different accounts that you've created. Like I am curious why. why have you started over again, I guess, with your different Instagram accounts? Because you've gone through all these different phases of who Bradley is, whether it's from Bradley from the trail to Bradley who is creating music to Bradley who is sharing, his hiking journey in Nepal to the Instagram account of your homestead property, which we haven't even talked about yet, but we might have to save for a future episode. To
Sure.
now, Bradley, who is now creating wood art. So like what is the where does the desire to start over come from for you?
I That's a good question. It's almost like I set the intention to make music for a year and just see what happens. And I did that. I followed through for a couple years actually. And I did it with the intention like I want to be able to make gains with this and make it a living in some way. So I was like, okay, well, I basically just it's like crumpling up the paper and tossing in the trash. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, scratch that idea. Let's start again. Let's start with a new paper and see what goes. And I there's something I like about a fresh start.
Hmm.
Um, and at some point on that Instagram, I was researching marketing, and people were talking about buying followers, and I think I bought like 5, 6, 700 followers or something like that on that account
Hmm.
to see if that would help in any way. It was just an experiment, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the way that felt after, and I didn't know how to like go in and delete these individual accounts because I didn't know who the fuck was who. And so
Right.
so I just deleted the whole thing. I was like, I'm just gonna start from scratch
Mm-hmm.
and see what happens. And I don't know. It might have been a mistake, but I'm done looking back at it at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think it's a mistake at all. I was just
So,
curious.
yeah, no, I appreciate that because I've thought it was a mistake at times. You know what I mean? I had these other people following me, but I think my account is just not it's not what Instagram likes to see. Instagram likes to see focused accounts on certain niches and things,
Mm.
and that's just not what I was in many ways. So, but who knows? Maybe there's space for more of eclectic accounts. I'm sure there are, but I think a lot of them get built through a dedicated focus. And then once you have the fire built, then it's like, oh, actually, I do this too. I do that too.
Mm.
But instead of like, all right, I got a fire here, I got a fire here, I got a fire here, like I'm just gonna focus on this one fire. And then once that's lit, I can bring other aspects to light as well. But
Mm.
I'm just gonna focus on this one fire and see if it takes off.
I like that, man. And I hope it does take off for you, and I think it
Me
will.
too, bro. Me too. Just be very interested. It's just super unique that people like you probably feel it when people buy your book. It's like, whoa, people actually spend their time and resources enjoying something that I created. So they're
Hmm.
getting like this, they're getting a part of my spark basically. And there's infinite sparks to give, right? So it's just very cool. It's very cool to have that kind of influence and to be able to serve in that particular way. I really feel like I'm on God's path on when I'm at my core creating something that's serving other people, like just checking all the right boxes.
Hmm.
And I'm growing and I feel like I'm growing at the same time. So yeah, let's catch fire, bro. Let's just catch fire. And it just takes that one time. That's what's kind of fun about the marketing too, and making these fucking stupid videos is like you just don't know. Like you're playing a little bit of the lottery. You know what I mean? Like a scratch off ticket. And it's like, well, you can't win the lottery if you don't play. So all right, I'll play.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, keep playing. Um, yeah, and
Thank you.
I deeply appreciate your time and you coming on the podcast. And I know we'll be in touch. So,
I think so. I think so. And I like moving forward for our catch ups to be pretty much in this space. I really enjoy it. And
mhm.
every time we do it, I think other people enjoy it too. So
Well, and every time that we don't do it, I think back and sometimes we'll mention it in the moment like, oh, we should have recorded that. That was deeply insightful for me, and that alone I think can spill out into other people's lives. So appreciate you,
Definitely.
Bradley. Thank you for coming on.
Love you, David. Appreciate you.
Love you too.
Congratulations on your book release. Let's catch fire, brother.
All right, we'll do it.
All right.
See you, Bradley. Appreciate you,
Yeah.
man. Peace. I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please subscribe. You can also support the podcast by purchasing one of my books if you haven't already. I've written two of them, one of them being The Trail Provides, and the second being True Nature. So you can find both of those books on Amazon or direct from me. Wishing you well today and always. Peace out.